Let's talk about seeing the invisible and doing the impossible. How about that? Sounds like a good subject. Exodus chapter 14. Don't be afraid. You know, stand still and see what he's going to do. Stand still and see the salvation of Yahweh. A lot of us either don't believe that God is for us. He's for everybody else. He's for all my friends. He's for all my, everybody in our congregation. God loves them. He's okay with me, I guess. He's not at war with me, but he doesn't really. So the first thing you need to do when you're thinking that way, that stinking thinking, cast that out. But just stand still for a minute and stop it. That's what he's trying to do. Just stop and look and start counting what has he done in my life. That's step A. Okay? But then there's another group that kind of in a freak out mode where he's like, stop! Okay, so we're on all different places. God deals with all personalities in this one verse if you just think about it. Like the one in freak out mode is like, stop it! Stand still. I got this. Look at me. You can't save yourself. I can. See my salvation, okay? That's what he's saying. And then there's a group that will even get paralyzed when he says stop. Well, God said stop, stand still. And so I'm standing still and I'm seeing the salvation. I'm not moving. I'm not doing anything. He's just going, I'm waiting on the Lord. How long have you been waiting? Well, about 3 years. Okay? That's probably long enough. I'll come see you next year. Still waiting? Yeah, I'm still waiting. Okay. We don't want to become frozen. He's not telling you to do that either. Stand still, see, and then move. Watch. You're going to see what he does. Yahweh will fight for you, and you're going to be silent. So he's going to move. He's going to start moving. If he's not moving, he's probably waiting for you. You're like, oh, I've got way more time than you do. Okay? Okay. So what can happen is we get stuck in the stand still mode. It's like, I'm just waiting on the Lord. You heard people say that? Have you said that? Okay. Overanalyzing is paralyzing. And it's a serious problem. It's called paralysis by analysis. Okay? Very common. It prevents your growth. It prevents you from growing in spiritually and physically. Whatever you're supposed to be doing, the enemy would, if the enemy could just freeze you, there's nothing he would like better. Because you just took you out. He might as well kill you, because if you're just frozen, you're not doing anything. You're not growing. You're not helping it. You're not doing anything. So don't get frozen. So there's a lot of personalities that God speaks to with this verse. He will fight for you. We're going to be silent. And he says, and so Yahweh says to Moses, why are you crying to me? Tell them to, this is a literal translation, tell them to pull up stakes. And that means, that's what it literally says in Hebrew. It means pull your tents up. Start your journey. That's literally what, think about this. God hasn't yet, there's no parted sea. They're standing at the water's edge. Pharaoh's army is right there. He didn't say run. Pick up your tents. Start your journey. Need some faith here, right? It's like, okay, there's sea, there's Pharaoh's army, and we should pack our tents. Okay. Yes! If you believe in the King of the universe, yes, you shouldn't freak out. And yes, you shouldn't go. You should pack your tents, because that's what he told you to do. All right? And that's where faith comes in. And he tells Moses, lift up your rod, stretch your hand over the sea and divide it, and the children of Israel shall go across the middle of the sea on the dry. Notice the word ground is in italics. It's added. It's not there in Hebrew. So, he finally tells Moses, do this to the sea. And where would the children of Israel be? They're going to be looking toward Moses. They're packing their tents, and they're going to be looking towards Moses, because he's the one that's, they're looking toward for instruction, right? Because they're like, okay, God said do this, let's do it. Moses, where do we go? Okay? And so Moses sticks his arm out. It starts to part, and they're ready to go. It makes sense. And it tells us what he's doing. He repeats that he's going to get honor over the pharaohs. And why? So that the Egyptians are going to know. They're about to know who is God. So everything that he told them in the past that was going to happen, he's like, by the way, right now is when I'm going to do this. Okay? And the angel of God, now this is in verse order, but the scene kind of has to pause for them to explain this. The angel of God who went before the camp of Israel moved and went behind them. The pillar of cloud moved from before them and went behind them. So they're facing Moses at the sea, and the pillar's right there. Pharaoh's army is coming behind them. It goes around behind them. The fire goes around behind them. Okay? This is happening as Pharaoh is coming out that gorge, right? So he can't, you read this and you're just like, okay, wait a minute. So Pharaoh's army is coming. If you don't picture where it happened, this is why context is really important. If you don't picture where this happened, say we're out on a big battlefield and Pharaoh's army starts coming, it's like, I've got a column of fire. And Pharaoh goes, my horses can go around it? You ever thought about that? Well, we will split and go around both sides of your column of fire. But what if? Look where it takes place. There's nowhere to go. In fact, I know that particular mountain range, and those walls are 2,000 feet high in places. They average 1,300 feet down through that gorge. Nobody on a horse and a chariot's going anywhere, except you're going to stay right there. And when the column appears in the middle, you stop. Okay? It came between the camp of Israel and Egypt, and it's there, it's there all night. So it's like, stop. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. Yahweh causes it to go back by a strong east wind all night that made the sea dry and the waters were divided. Pay real close attention, okay? So everything's just on pause and the wind's blowing and it's, there's so many pictures. This is kind of a cool one. But the bottom of the Gulf of Aqaba, I've studied the bathymetric maps and the charts of the Gulf of Aqaba, and it doesn't look like that. In fact, on the shore next to Beach Nuweiba, there's a deep trench. And on the opposite shore near Saudi Arabia, there's another deep trench. Pretty reasonable bar out in the middle. Yes, sands could shift. Yes, it could look different in another time for sure. But that's the way it looks today. And that has a tendency to be the way channels work. But if we look at the language, culture, context, we remember the Bible didn't actually say that it was dry ground. It just said it was dry. And what it does say is in the next chapter in the Song of Moses where they're praising God for what he did, it says this. It says, with the blast of your nostrils, the waters were piled up and the flood stood upright as a heap and the depths were congealed in the heart of the sea. And we go, what does that mean? That's what it actually says. What does it mean? Okay. What does the blast of your nostrils usually mean? You can picture the old man winter kind of thing. There's like, it's talking to God and something comes. Why would they say that? Didn't say it came whistling across the desert. It came down from God. I didn't even think about it. I've got a picture I could have put here of airplane at 35 or 37,000 feet flying over that. And what was the temperature? 50 below zero or something? Crazy cold. 50, 60, something. I'm looking out there going, how do these engines even run in it? That's cold, Like, please keep running. Dear Lord, please keep those things running because it's crazy cold out there. Imagine if that wind comes down and hits the water in a blast, not just a breeze. This is a blast, okay? Picture it. The waters were piled up. How do you do that? In buckets? Gallon jug? Well, here it is. Brown Driver Briggs says that means piled up to be heaped up. It's a literal translation. They're piled up. Water piled. How do you pile water? Water doesn't pile. That's why they put water in levels, because it doesn't pile. But the Bible says it did. It's a verb. It's doing it. What else? It says they're in a heap. Okay? That word literally means, the Hebrew word ned, it means heap. So they're piled up in a heap. Literal translation here. I like using literal translation. But the next word's kind of interesting. The depths were congealed in the heart of the sea. What is that? Kafah. Words used in modern Hebrew, but I'm looking at the Strong's definition here. Primitive root, it's a root word, doesn't come from anything else. Thicken as curdled milk, clouded sky, or what? Frozen water. Now, here's the question. Can you pile up and heap up frozen water? Yes, you can. Okay? And then when you will go across it, would you be on the dry? Now, realize if you just blew the water out of the way, you've got a lot of terrain to deal with, and you got mud to deal with. Okay? Even if it was smooth, we got 2.5 million people and their animals about to cross something that's been underwater for thousands of years. Have you ever seen an animal try to cross a pond or something? It's like, I have gotten them out of that, and they bog up. So this works. Again, so the depths were frozen is the word it should be, not congeal. The depths were frozen in the heart of the sea. That makes sense. And that's literally what it says. We're not making up anything here. We're just seeing what the word says. Language, first rule. What does it say? If it doesn't make sense in English, go to the original language and say, and that is a crazy sentence there. Like, what does it mean? The Egyptians pursued them and went in after them into the middle of the sea. And it came to pass in the morning watch that Yahweh looked forth from the camp of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and the cloud, and he troubled the camp of the Egyptians. I like that. I looked that one up, and it's just like, he's messing with them. It says, and this is one of the translations. We're going to look at it in a minute, but it says he took off their wheels of their chariots, so that made them drive with difficulty. You think? He bound, this is another translation, this is from the Septuagint. He bound the axle trees of their chariots. I'm like, what? Wait a minute, what's he doing? What is he doing? The word there is sur in Hebrew. It means to turn them off, literally or figuratively, to turn them aside. So it literally says, he turned aside the wheels. He tore the wheels off their chariots. Now remember, they're going over frozen, jumbled ice in chariots with wooden wheels, really fast. How well does that work for wooden wheels? Not too good. And so their wheels are falling off, and that makes them difficult to drive. You think? You ever tried to drive a car without wheels on it? You don't go very far. I actually had that happen. I had an old Volkswagen Beetle when I was in high school. I'm going down the road one day, like, and as I glanced aside, I see my wheel go by. Like, it was difficult to drive it. I can tell you that. So he froze their wheels and twisted them off the chariots. And okay. But what's interesting, I want you to see what they said. Oh, okay, I don't have it. It actually says right here, right after that, it says that this is when they freak out and said that God is fighting for Israel, because they knew this wasn't normal. Moses stretched forth his hand to the sea, and it returns back at the former place. And the Egyptians were trying to run. They see it caving back in. They try to run, and it overcame them. And Yahweh overthrew the Egyptians in the middle of the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots, the horsemen, even all of Pharaoh's army that went in after the sea. And there remained not so much as one of them. Destroyed the entire army. But the children of Israel walked on the dry in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall to them on the right and on their left. Does that make sense now? Okay. It's frozen. It's a stack. It's a heap of water. Thus Yahweh saved Israel that day out of the hands of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Okay? So what happens here? First of all, the children of Israel had to do their part. I'm sure when it starts opening up, it's like, oh, wow, that had to be just a little bit scary to go into that. I mean, really? Okay? I mean, granted, those bad guys are over there, but that's just like the weirdest thing I've ever seen, and you want me to just go charging through that? Okay? But believing in him means to see him. You know, he says, stand still and see the Yeshua of Yahweh. Do we see him? You know, in a way that makes sense, in a way that we can believe him. Okay? You know, it's going to take some faith to go into that gully that's frozen and opened up there. But it's not only Egypt's knowledge of him that he's trying to make happen. He wants Israel to believe in him, to have faith in him, enough faith to go through the gorge, enough faith to walk through the passage that he has made for you out of danger. See, sometimes we're in a bad place and we see a way out, but we're scared of that too. Yeah, but what if How many people have been paralyzed by what if? He gives us a direction. We kind of know, you just kind of know that's where I'm supposed to go, but you're scared and you don't do it. What would happen here if that's what we did? Okay. So we can't be the frozen. Israel is the one who struggles with God. That's what the definition is. Those who struggle with God. Not against God, with God. Struggle along with God. Not ignoring Him. But from here forward, Israel will always be with God. And that's what faith is all about. Being with God. Knowing that He's there. Stand still. See the Yeshua of Yahweh. Be with God. Which means you're never alone. And no matter what you're facing, knowing He's there and will provide a way out makes a huge difference. Amen? Amen.